What I'm attempting to do with the studio visits is actually take people inside and give them access to meeting the artists instead of going through a museum group. We're actually doing this for free. Hi, today I'm at 32 Greene Street here in Soho, New York, and I'm currently standing in the exhibition called Urban Utopia, which features 12 emerging artists and 31 works of art. These artists were picked by our curatorial team, which include Heidi Lee, Anastasia Rogers, and Carlina Mueller. And they're part of our curatorial board that we have at Kipton Art. Talk a little bit about how we ended up working together on this. It seemed like such a great collaboration. So,
I think it all ended up happening quite organically, actually. I mean, the selections that we made, we did sift through a number of artists, and while I think there were times some of us were steering toward one artist or another, we really came to a very genuine compromise on what was going to be best for the exhibition.
My name's Stefan Folks. I work with wood. Wood has such a great character, you know, it's got a history. It was a tree, then it became a plank, it became part of a building, it became garbage, it became raw material in my studio. So it's really a lot about the material and respect for the material and the history of the material. I worked at a school in the city teaching woodworking to 5 to 10-year-olds. And watching them have so much fun with the tools and the material really inspired me to investigate the material as a creative process. Not just working with wood, I was a ceramics major in college. I learned to carve stone in the south of France, taught stone carving in the south of France. I tried to paint for a couple of years, but I'm not a painter.
I am Jade Dosco, and I'm a photographer. I was always kind of an outside observer, seeing how everything fit together. And it wasn't until undergrad that I started developing an interest in photography, and while at New York University, I won an award for some early work, and it kind of made me think that I should try pursuing it. This project actually was sparked by just a family trip in Spain. I was in Sevilla and was struck by the contrast between the old city and this really bizarre World's Fair site in this little area, kind of outside of the city. Because here we had these centuries-old buildings and then these kind of nondescript pavilion structures, and the visual paradox was very striking. My goals are multifold, I would say. I would love to show in some museums. I've had many gallery shows, which have been great. But yeah, to show internationally ultimately it would be wonderful.
Matthew Satz. I have 4 pieces on exhibit here. There are 2 strip paintings and a byproduct painting and a smoke painting. Basically all of my work is geared towards an attempt to push the medium of painting into a space that painting generally, or in the past, or only at certain times in the past, has attempted to change in its form. There's a clear coat strip painting, which was an early attempt to make an invisible painting. There's there's some theory based upon the idea of making an invisible painting, and that work ended up being accomplished in a way which this strip painting here, this clear coat, is just a step in the process of getting to that point.
My name is Erica Simone, and I'm a photographer. The reason why I really got into photography was mainly because, I've always been around photography. My mom was a collector, and I was always obsessed with photography as a little kid. I'm not really sure why, but mainly because I like to capture life, and I like to take reality and put it on paper and immortalize the moment. Travel photography, that's my #1. If I can get to a point where I can just take my camera and travel the world and come back and be able to do something with the images, then that's really what I'd like to do.
I think in the end, it's kind of hard to say what came first, the title and the concept or the work. It all kind of happened simultaneously, but we started going in a very sort of formal architectural direction. And I think because of, and I think that our styles did really sort of fuse, and by, because of that, started selecting works that really made sense together, made sense to each of our aesthetics.
We all came from very different backgrounds. We had a short amount of time to work on this, and we pulled it all together. And it was really remarkable. For my first time collaborating with other curators, this was probably the most enjoyable experience. And I think maybe also the fact that we have been living in New York for several years was something that brought us together and helped us agree on almost everything unanimously, which is sort of kind of unheard of.
I'm Melissa Fleming. I'm a visual artist. So in Urban Utopia, I'm showing 2 pieces from my Wax Flora series. This is Red Wax 1 and Purple Wax 4. They're inspired more or less by the idea of a bouquet of flowers, because a flower arrangement is made of natural materials, but also assembled and organized by human hands. My true education really came with an elective class in college, and then later on I went to graduate school to get an MFA and I focused in a lot on photography there. But I am continuing to photograph colorful things in the natural world. Currently I'm working on a series of light and rainbows.
My name is Julie Combal, and these are my pieces. This is Harvest Ministry. And it was an image of a ministry that was struck by a tornado. And then these are titled Snow Factory 1 and 2. And they're a factory that ended up collapsing because of the weight of the snow that had fallen on the structure. In 2007, I just started asking myself the question, what is a landscape now? What is contemporary landscape? What is our relationship to nature and nature's relationship to us? I have a painting degree from Skidmore, and then I also have a master's in art therapy at School of Visual Arts. So I've been painting pretty much for the past, 10 years, 15 years now. As an art therapist, I work with adults at a city hospital here in New York. I help people work through emotional trauma, physical trauma, and also the emotions of being hospitalized.
My name is David Mellon, and this sculpture is Red Light's Body. It's started off with the basic idea of one object overtaking another. With the 2 objects coming together, it was a little bit like a joining of hands, which is kind of the end of the sculpture there. I was lucky to live in Europe for 4 years and travel around and look at artwork in person and form my own ideas. And I figure if I can get through that, if I can get through just saying it's not necessary to even be an artist and build something up from that, and then still want to do the artwork, I thought that would be a stronger foundation. Long-term goals are really to keep working. That's the main thing. To keep working, you need collectors, you need to make the money somehow. And as long as I can find collectors, as long as people would buy the sculptures and I can get money, I can keep working. And it's basically that simple, just to keep working.
My name is Sabina Forbes. My first work is Le Carnaval, and I painted that a couple of years ago, and it was after, I think, my niece's birthday party, and everything was just so bright and colorful and happy, and all her little friends were running around. So, and I just love the idea of emotion and pattern and thought being so organic, so pure. Children don't, they don't dissemble. They're not old enough to know that yet, so I loved that joy. And the second work is City Streets 1, and City Streets 2 is just a continuation of that. My mother's father was actually an artist, and he started later in life, so when I got to be early 30s, I was offered a chance to have my own show. And I thought, oh my God, if I don't take this now, I'll never have the courage to do it again. And I just started from there, so it's very exciting.
So I feel like this experience was probably because of the synergy and the chemistry and what we had in common, and it brought us together. And then the artists who so deserved, a platform to have this kind of exposure and awareness about their work was also something we all felt, very passionate about.
In this show especially, we have both, developing, emerging, and established artists, and I think that's something very key to kind of take note of what's happening in the contemporary art scene in New York.
I'm Avery McCarthy. What inspired me to create the series There Are No Stars Here is I always used to really like stargazing as a child, And when I came to New York City, there aren't really any stars in the sky. And so this project for me was really about wandering around New York City with a camera at night and finding celestial light in the artificial lights in New York City at night. I always thought it was a really cool object, the camera. And so then at the end of middle school, I had the opportunity to take a photography class at the high school over the summer. I tried it, and I loved it, and I got into the photo program when I got to high school, and you know, it really gave me an identity. It gave me something that I was good at, that I could put my energy into. When it came time to apply for college, it was just, you know, that was all I ever wanted to do at that point. So I don't like being described as Avery McCarthy, the photographer, because I don't really think of someone as a painter or a sculptor or a photographer. I just like to think of it as art, because lots of artists work in different mediums, and I just kind of like the step back view of you know, how to describe a person.
My name is James Kennedy, and I'm an artist. Both works in the exhibit are actually from a series called the Spatial Series, and they very much explore mathematical and spatial placement within a canvas. Primarily, when I left art school, I was painting almost classical landscapes, Turner-esque in form, but using oil blending techniques. And then from there I went into texture and form, and so I've sort of taken those elements and applied them to the process of creating these works.
My name is Michael Chiarello. This is my sculptures. It's entitled Intertwine, and where it comes from, the idea behind it is it's kind of based off of the previous work. The previous work before this was very weighty and very boxy, and I kind of want the next work, which is this. I wanted to kind of evolve from that and take it to a new kind of just a new look. For most of my, I guess I would say life, for maybe about 15 years or so, I've done sculpture. So half my life. And sculpture just came naturally. The material, in the beginning when I was very young, I started painting and doing this, but then I think once I always wanted to build things, and I was always building things and constructing things and dealing with space and light and so on and so forth. So once I really got a taste of sculpture and getting into it, that's what it's been like, you know, that's what I've been doing.
Hi, my name is Ulla Einstein. I'm a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary artist. And in this exhibition, Urban Utopia, I'm showing 3 works that all combine the synthetic and the natural and the organic. These are drawings with fire cut blades on Tyvek, and what combines all 3 of them is, again, this combination of the synthetic and the natural. The painting, for example, has dried blossoms and eggshells in it as a texture mixed with the paint. The others are very labor-intensive works where I've created techniques with heat and fire and knives to create the textures.
There is suddenly a blend of all different mediums, all different, you know, artist backgrounds, and I think Heidi and Anastasia and I really kind of, you know, took that into consideration, and also into consideration what's happening in the New York art scene. I mean, around the corner we have Deitch Projects closing, and that's kind of leaving a gap for the downtown art scene. And kind of in response to that, we wanted to show, you know, a little bit of everything what's happening right now.
I basically came up with this theme called Urban Utopia because the artists that we selected seemed to fall under the premise of being urban, inspired by urban landscapes, and also carrying this notion of utopia, sort of like these empty landscapes, and these wonderfully exuberant and optimistic photographs or paintings and sculptures. So the medium really wasn't specific. It was really about finding a common denominator between these artists that we selected, and we went about it. The two other curators went about it kind of seamlessly because we all were in agreement, and that was sort of testimony to the theme Urban Utopia being kind of like the underlying common denominator between all these artists. And it just happened to be 12 artists, which was the perfect number. We didn't want to have too many or too few to give a good representation of what's happening in New York. And there's just so much talent, and they need to be represented properly and give them a fair platform to kind of get some exposure, great exposure. The art opening was a big success, thanks to you, and I think they were really happy. Everybody was really happy.
The really interesting thing about the Urban Utopia exhibition as well, when the curators picked the artists, is that they included not only photographers and painters, but also sculptors as well. So you see Stefan Folks, you see the giant sculptures around, you see David Mellon, for example. It's interesting to see the kind of the collaboration or the synergy, really, that the curators and how they selected these group of artists to work together and play off of each other based on the theme. And to see a combination between the 2009 and 2010 winners. The exciting part about this exhibition is it was narrowed down from 79 artists on the site originally who were new subscribers, and we set up a new system on the site actually to reward artists that are kind of permanent members for the 12 months to give them extra visibility. We're also able to provide them unique opportunities such as the 32 Greene exhibition space for 30 days so that we can really showcase their work.